Thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. On today's review, we take a look at the Threezero Berserk Guts Berserker armor. Today I'll be reviewing this figure in the following categories: accessories, articulation, design, is it essential to your collection, functionality, and price. Once those scores are totaled, I give you my opinion if this figure is a pass or a purchase. So I'm shooting this video in the daytime. There will probably be some shadowing. Also, there is some considerable noise in my background. Nothing that I can do about that at the moment. So for accessories, it doesn't look like a lot, but what we get, I think, is efficient enough. So let's start with this, what I'm going to call a collar piece. If I'm not mistaken, I think this attaches around his neck. The reason I'm saying I think, for some odd reason, I don't have instructions. And typically with Threezero, you do receive instructions with their action figures. So I don't know if mine's just was missing. I also have another issue with mine's, which we'll get into a little bit later. So you come with two interchangeable head sculpts. This is the second. The other one is already on the face, and it looks okay. You do receive an alternate head sculpt, and this is probably the head sculpt that I will go with. I really like how it looks. The red eyes underneath. This just reminds me of a bear trap somehow. I really like this one. And then you get 8 hands in total. Instead of having 4 pair, you do get an extra left hand, which we're going to take a look at this one. And if you take a look at this hand, it's weird. So you have the hand itself, and then behind it, you have what looks like a fist if you flip it in the opposite direction. So I'm pretty sure that this is specific to the figure itself. I just don't know exactly what this is in reference to. Then you receive a cape, which I really like. It is very thick. You do have a wire, and you can see the dirt and tears on this cape. So this is an item that looks fantastic. And then you get what's probably the best accessory of the set, and it's this enormous sword. And this thing looks fantastic. There is weathering all over it. And then you have a black texturing in the middle. And I really do love this handle. This cloth good ties at the end. Really a nice touch. The only thing that I would have wanted was for this to be die cast, but I understand how heavy this would have been for that figure and the problems that this could have caused. So for overall accessories, not too shabby. You get a few ways to display this character: cape on, cape off, different head sculpts, as well as interchangeable face plates, the collar piece. So for overall accessories, I'm going to give this figure a 9 out of 10. Before we jump into the articulation, if I haven't mentioned this, there's going to be some noise in my background. Not much that I can do in it. Live in New York City. It is the summertime, music, loud voices. So we're going to push through the video. So starting with the head, it is able to look up about that far. It's able to look all the way down. Rotation, you get a great amount of pivot, and it does shift back and forth. So with the arm is able to go up much further than expected. I am very surprised with that. You can get it to, well, just leave this off for a moment. You can get it to turn a full 360 if you choose to. There is an upper bicep cut right here. Next point of rotation. Not sure if it's just the gauntlet itself moving or if it's full functionality with this piece. You do get rotation at the wrists, which are on the ball peg, so you're able to get it to move in any direction you need to. The elbows are double jointed, bending in way more than I thought. Wow, I'm very surprised with that. You do have a butterfly joint collapsing forward that much, collapsing backwards that much. Very surprised at how much it moves forward. So for the torso, not sure what we have here. Let's take a look. So you have A and B portion. You have a floating torso, which is my favorite. So just using the top, he's able to crunch forward a phenomenal amount. Backwards, not much at all. He does rotate, and he has great pivot. Using the combination of the two, he's able to go forward that much. Backwards that much. Rotation, great pivot. And do you have rotation at the waist? Maybe not, but it does rotate here. So far, I'm very impressed. So with the legs, they're able to nearly kick all the way to the side. They kick all the way forward. Can you see that? Backwards, a very good amount. You do have upper rotation. Next point of rotation would be at the foot, which turns. It's able to go down that much, forward that much. You do get good pivot in as well as out, and then you have toe articulation, which is pretty tight. The knees are double jointed, bending all the way in. So for articulation, I am super impressed. I cannot believe this 1/6 scale figure moves this way. I'm blown away. So for overall articulation, I'm going to give this figure a 10 out of 10. So for design, before we jump into them, I want to change the look. I'm going to go ahead and put this interchangeable piece on. If I am correct, this piece removes hair and I'm able to attach it like so. I also want to change the interchangeable head scope as well. In order to do so, you want to tug hair. This is set in place pretty tight. Okay, I was getting a little bit nervous, but as you can see, it does detach. And we're going to go ahead and plug this piece in. You can see the peg right here. We're going to plug it in the chest. Actually, I want to remove the head first. So let's go ahead and pull that head off. Now let's pop this in place. Hopefully this is on camera, as this is a pretty big figure and I'm working, not looking through the lens. Okay, let me fix this properly. So you're going to notice once you plug this piece in, it's going to stick straight up and it's not supposed to look at that. What I'm thinking is the moment you put the head on, you simply push this down as it's pretty soft and the head will hold it in place. Now before we do that, I want to remove this faceplate. I'm assuming you gently pull it out. That came out pretty easy. If you can look up top, you see where the piece plugs in. So this is pretty easy to attach and detach. So now with our new face scope on, we're going to go ahead and put the head on. Okay, so with that head on, just want to give you a quick roundabout so that you can see how it looks. You can also push the head down some so that it's more buried and it looks similar to this. So now let's just talk about the design. It is extremely textured, and I mean that in a good way. You take a look, you can see all of the armor clads. You can see small areas to where there are ribbons or some sort of buttons that are painted. And there's absolutely some dry brushing on this figure. Now, I think that it could be more dry brushing. All the images that I'm seeing of this figure appears to have more metallic than what I'm seeing here. Now, this thing is pretty shiny in some areas, but that shine is coming off as it's black. Yeah, most of this looks black here. So the only thing I really want to see in this figure would be more silver highlights. I really feel that that would have brought out what is supposed to be armor, and it would have also broken up some of this black. Also, I'm not sure if the coloring on the face is accurate. It is definitely shiny in some areas, and I think it's more brown than perhaps what it should be, though I could be wrong about that. So for overall design, I'm going to give this figure an 8 out of 10. So as far as being essential to your collection, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. This is your only opportunity of finding a 1/6 scale articulated Berserker armor guts. This is it. You're not getting this from anyone else. With that being said, this particular figure, this particular design is very scene specific. For those of you that are familiar with the manga, or has watched the animated movie, you know that this wasn't Guts' primary look. For those of you not familiar with this property, just think about a movie with a knight. And the knight goes the whole movie in peasant clothes, and then at the very end, they're given this armor to put on. This is what this is, essentially. So as far as being essential to your collection, I'm going a little bit on the higher end because this is your only opportunity to get this in 1/6 scale. So as far as being essential to your collection, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. So for functionality, we are going to be here for a while. I'm going to try to speed it up. I may take a few shortcuts. So if you notice, there is something that's glaringly missing. Well, maybe not glaringly missing, as the armor itself has so many angles and it's easy to lose your eye. But one of the armor pads is actually missing. Now, I am unsure if it came this way out of the package where it just wasn't included, or if my son got his hands on it. So for that, I won't be deducting a point, as I'm just not sure. So, before we start swapping heads and hands, I think we have to take time to look at the engineering of this figure, and in my opinion, it is pretty amazing. So let's start with this armor piece that goes over the shoulder. I love that it gets out of the way. If you take a look on the inside, you can see where this part right here, there's a hole that actually connects to this ball peg on the arm. So this is able to get out of the way and allow for maximum movement. Now, what I don't like that it detaches pretty easily. And I'm thinking this was done so by design. In the event if you start to push the figure too far, this piece will pop off versus breaking. I also like how the armor constructs, another part here is also a separate piece. So that allows for this figure, for the arm in particular, to get out of the way, going way up. That is just extraordinary. And also too, with the black design, it is very easy to hide the floating portion. Threezero made sure to add enough of this so that it covers, even when you're bending forward and backwards, really you're seeing no space in between it, and I really like that. And just coming down to the legs are able to drop down, and this isn't needed. They already have fantastic range by themselves, but if you drop them down, they're able to kick even further. I'm gonna go ahead and prop that up. Before we prop that up, I wanna show that in certain areas, they're soft, pliable material, so that allows for the legs to get full range as well as other areas in the body. And as you saw earlier, the figure stands on its own. The limbs are not tight, secure. That is the proper word. They're not loose at all. They're where you would want your tightness to be in each of the joints. So with this out of the way, we're going to go ahead and start swapping parts. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the head. We're also going to remove this piece, as I don't think we can use it right now. We're going to take the soft good capes and apply it over. Before we put this head on, I want to show that you can separate it. And here is the area to where you insert your batteries. There are 2 screws. Now, I have batteries somewhere. I took them from one of my Iron Man figures, as I don't install batteries in them. Where they are, I have no idea. Hopefully I'll find them in time to show the light up feature for this figure. So as I put this head on the body, I noticed that something was missing. At first, I didn't know that the face went inside, but it actually does. If you look pretty closely, there are some ports to where you can get that in, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And there it is, plugged in. Let's get it on the figure. So here he is with that alternate head sculpt as well as that cape. And man, that cape is really doing something to this figure. So he comes with 2 hands on him that are fisted, 2 gripping hands, 2 weapon holding hands. You get a relaxed finger hand, and then you get this hand, which I showed earlier, which is actually hollow in the inside. I'm going to see if we can figure out where this goes. So if I'm correct, Guts is right-handed. So what we want to do, we want to swap out this fisted hand for a weapon gripping hand. Whoa, not the head. All right, with the head back on, we're going to get this sword in this hand. Instead of pushing the hilt all the way through, as it's way too thick, hopefully the hands are soft enough to where I can just pry them in, just maneuvering. Actually, I'm going to take the hand off. Yeah, there we go. All right, there you have it. So now let's wrap this functionality part up. Threezero did a phenomenal job with the engineering. Something that I failed to mention is on the elbow, you have this elbow guard, which is actually detachable. All of the accessories work well with the figure. The hand is soft enough so that this large blade is able to fit in, and it grips it exceptionally well. The cape looks extraordinary, and it is wired, so you can pose the cape how you see accordingly. The wire starts at this point and just stretches to the end. There is no wire in the back of the cape, though I really doubt that you'll need that. Now the downside. This figure should have came with additional pegs, as if you attempt to hold this sword in this hand, just with him holding it up, the sword is too heavy. So you have to find a way to prop it on his shoulder, or perhaps to use both hands to do so. Fortunately, this figure is articulated enough to where you can manage to get both hands around the sword, and maybe I'll do so in a slide. So for functionality, this thing is fantastic. There are a few gripes with parts falling off. Aside from that, really extraordinary engineering, and I'm going to give this figure a 9 out of 10. So for pricing, this figure comes in at $220. Add in taxes, you're looking about $22. Add in shipping, looking about $4. Add the two and you're looking at a price point of $246. So now is this figure worth the price of admission? So let's see what he comes with. In terms of accessories, you get a decent spread. You get interchangeable faceplates. You get a different armored head. You have a huge sword which looks fantastic. You have this cape, to me, which really changes the look of the figure. So you get a different options in order to display this, as well as a decent amount of hands. The design of this thing is great. I mentioned earlier that some silver highlights would, of course, brought this scope out a lot more. The three draws for this figure is 1, the scale. Second would be the look. And last would be the engineering. This thing was engineered phenomenal. So for pricing, this is a bargain. And yes, I know it's $220. However, I take a look at other 1/6 scale companies, Hot Toys in particular. For this same amount of engineering and detail, this figure would have been $400 at Hot Toys. So for pricing, I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. That should give this figure an overall cliff score of 53 out of 60. So now is this figure a pass or a purchase? Just take a look for a moment at how I have this figure articulated. Down on one knee with the other knee fully bent while holding his sword. So is this something that you pick up if you a Berserker fan? Ooh, took some time to get that correct. I'm going to say if you are a 1/6 scale collector, if you collect Star Wars, you can find a place in your display base. If you collect DC, you can find a place in your display base. If you collect Marvel, you get where I'm going with this. So this figure is an absolute purchase. When I seen it out of the box, I felt a little bit disappointed. Getting it in hand, putting on that cape in particular, throwing that sword in, messing around with the articulation. This thing is fantastic. So I wanted to show you how that hand goes, if you take a look there. So it's meant to sort of retract back and have a repulsor effect. All right, so here is Guts in his Berserker armor. All right, here he is next to Spider-Man, the Homecoming suit. I was planning on reviewing this figure. Maybe I still will. Oh, doesn't look like Spider-Man passed the stand test. Let's get him out of here. Here he is next to an Iron Man figure, which is typically my go-to with 1/6 scale figures. And for the last comparison, let's throw in a Dark Knight. Here he is next to Batman Arkham's Knight, which possibly reviewed. Surprised that Batman is that much bigger than Guts. So thank you for tuning in to Mr. Cliff's Toy Shop. I hope to see you during the review. If you are wondering, I did not find the batteries. Maybe I'll do another 1/6 scale review and possibly I can throw him in as well as Alphonse and show their light up features.